fellow Planeswalkers.
I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you're listening to the newest episode of the Commander-at-Arms podcast. This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about mid-level tiered commander games. But before we do that, we have our upkeep trigger to do, and we're going to thank all of our patrons who support us directly on patreon.com/commanderatarms. Actually, I went through that URL pretty dang quickly. I want to thank all the patrons there. You guys help to keep the lights on here and keep us from doing everything that we want to be able to do, getting all the content to your eyes and your ears. And like I said, if you want to support us directly, you can do it at patreon.com/commanderatarms. Mail day, Paul. And are any interesting finds? Have you got anything in the mail lately at all?
So if you're listening to this, we didn't post an episode last week. And I think on the last episode that we recorded, I had mentioned that my friend Tino had gotten me a foil Dramatic Reversal, and he actually followed that up with a foil Isochron Scepter. And he said, I thought it would be nice bling for your CDH deck. So thank you very much, Tino. You were a great friend and a great person, and I promise you I will put these to good use.
Yeah, like I said last time, I want a friend like that who sends me foils. I haven't got anything interesting in the mail not commander-wise. It's definitely commander-wise, but I haven't got anything in the ways of cards, but I have just purchased our new Commander-at-Arms playmat. So that is something that we're going to be looking at getting into in the near future or so. If you're interested in that, just let us know on Twitter or anywhere else. But I got one because I wanted a playmat that's a Commander-at-Arms on it. It's got a little QR code that has access to all of our socials, which I think is really cool as well. After that, we have a YouTube video to talk about, Paul. Actually, you have a YouTube video to talk about.
A couple weeks ago, it would be a couple weeks ago by this point. Me and James were playing at our LGS, and we were outside doing our normal post-game evening chat. And he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. And I was like, you know what, James? I'll pilot it. Something to that effect. I don't even remember what happened, but I think James was just out of ideas. And I was like, you know what? I haven't talked about Miracle yet, so I'll do that. And surprise, surprise, on our YouTube channel, there is a Miracil the Pretender deck tech, which I recorded. If you've been listening to this podcast for pretty much any amount of time, you know that Miracil is my personal favorite deck. It is the deck that I go to whenever I want to have fun. And I decided it was finally time to, just rip the Band-Aid off and get that done. So if Miracil is something that you're interested in, or if you're interested in seeing a rather unorthodox commander /list, feel free to check that deck tech out. It uses a lot of cards that you don't typically see because of awful downsides that Miracil gets to ignore. So it's good for expanding your knowledge of cards because, like I said, there are a lot on there that you will likely not know. So please give that a view, check it out, give it a like, comment down below, and do all that fun stuff.
Definitely don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. You can find that at youtube.com/commanderatarms, or just type in Commander-at-Arms into the old search bar and you'll find all of our other deck techs, unboxings, and anything else we put up on the YouTube channel, which that's all it is currently. Alluding to gameplay. I'm just going to say that every single time we have to plug that YouTube channel because we're getting to gameplay. It's going to happen. Everyone wants to see our gameplay videos, so let's make that a thing. Before we get into our main phase one here and keep the discussion going about mid-tier commander, let's talk about our play of the week, Paul. I know from we had our pre-recording discussions, our pre-episode discussions, you said you played commander with your friends last night. Did you have any interesting plays of the week from there?
I gotta think about this. Let's see. Yes. One of my friends, Alex, he played a Drannith Magistrate on turn 2 that stuck around until turn 14, 15. And I was playing Elish Norn. Chad was playing The green red god from Theros Beyond Death. Help me out, James.
Oh, I know. Clothis?
There you go, Clothis. And John was playing Lyra Dawnbringer, Angels. And there were literally the only person that had a commander out was Alex for like the first hour and a half of that game. And unfortunately for Alex, he had to do that because since I was playing Elish Norn, he was playing a new list that he just made completely from his own imagination. It is pretty cool. I don't want to talk too much about it because it is his idea, so it's not really my place to do that. But it relied a lot on 1 and 2 toughness creatures, and I was playing Elish Norn. So, little unfortunate for him, he kind of had to, suppress me as much as he could. And yeah, I've just never seen such a pivotal card last that long on the battlefield.
Yeah, normally mine gets removed straight away, but I love that that's a little bit of a it's kind of like a foreshadowing part of what this episode's about, Paul. I like that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, it is actually a really good segue.
I'm like, it's super foreshadowing. Yeah, I'm not even going to spoil that with my own play of the week because mine was just elves. So anyway, let's get into main phase 1 here, and let's start talking about what is mid-tier commander. So we have a little bit of a blurb kind of like discussion kind of thing of like, we wrote down our own ideas of what we believe mid-tier commander to be. So we kind of thought that like, not really thought, but like we feel that mid-tier commanders, there are decks that they're not exactly tuned or optimized to their full potential. So they're not using tutors or anything or any other like ways to get around the consistency of certain effects. They're also not running the most efficient cards in each slot that they want to be putting those cards into. And Paul put a couple of examples here, and he said cancel versus counterspell. So cancel, I believe, is 2 blue for an instant that says counter target spell, and counterspell is just 2 blue, correct?
Cancel is 1 blue, 3 mana total.
1 blue, my bad. I saw the 2 blue pips in my head and said 2. Yeah, that's how I normally do it. That's why I always mess up mana values on cards. And then Enray's Forerunners versus Craterhoof Behemoth.
Yeah, these are the same mana cost. It's just that Enray's Forerunners is a flat +2/+2, I believe. And Craterhoof Behemoth gives +X/+X, so it can scale upward with how many creatures you have.
Yeah, it also gives trample as well, whereas Craterhoof gives trample and Enray's gives vigilance, I believe.
No, Craterhoof Behemoth gives trample. You might be right. I can't remember. I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Craterhoof Behemoth definitely gives trample. I think Enray's Forerunners. Yeah, Enray's Forerunners gives vigilance. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I love it. We got there in the end, Paul, and that's how we usually go on this podcast. And then moving on from there, this is where we really see our bigger, flashier, higher cost spells. So you kind of see more of like your 8, 9, 10 drops that aren't coming down, turn 5 or 6 or anything. Games usually run a lot longer than we typically like to see. Well, not like to see this. Typically, what we see in higher play commander, usually see about 1 to 2 spells per turn on curve. Over seeing like 4 or 5 spells coming down in one turn. Usually a lot of them are like 0 drops or 1 drops or 2 drops, or kind of accelerating from fast mana rocks into pivotal pieces of the commander deck that you're playing that really go in hand with the strategy of the deck that you're playing as well. And you're seeing a lot of more complicated stacks and not stack pieces, but like the complicated stacks that kind of come up, and more counterspell heavy and a lot more interaction, which is what we're about to get into now, because Paul wrote this little blurb here. If you want to talk about interaction there, Paul.
Yeah, so interaction, but when I say interaction, I mean like actually interacting with specific cards or permanents or spells or whatever. And generally at the lower echelon of play, you're going to find that interaction is generally like more proactive versus reactive. So what I mean by that is like in a low to mid level, usually you'll see people like a permanent will hit the table, it'll last like a turn cycle, maybe 2, and then somebody will be like, okay, I'm gonna Crows and Grip it. And that's what I mean by proactive. Like that permanent hits the battlefield, it does a thing, and then it gets destroyed. Whereas in higher echelons of play, interaction is more reactive. Like you're dealing with things on the stack before they even have an opportunity to do anything with like counter spells or like emptying the stack by like ending the turn or whatever. That doesn't really happen that often. But you can see people like bounce spells from the stack to people's hands with like Venser, and there are other cards that do that I'm failing to remember right now. But that's what I mean by proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, and I feel like in mid-tier Commander is more where you're going to see a lot more politics happening, where you're having like in-game discussions about what people think are threats, what people don't think are threats, like how we can kind of get around this like permanents that are on the battlefield that need to go. Like if you have lots of problematic permanents, you kind of discuss about how to get rid of them versus just using your own removal to get rid of them and not worrying about the rest of the table. So yeah, I mean, like that's kind of what we're talking about in mid. I know that when Paul and I play, it's usually a split between half politicking and half knowing that a certain permanent has to get off the battlefield for my deck to work. Kind of similar to the game that you talked about, Paul, where Alex had the Drannith Magistrate and you weren't allowed to play Elish Norn.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been an instant where, you could have maybe popped some politics around the table and been like, well, if you get rid of that, then I can help you later on with this kind of thing and maybe get some good favor with the rest of the table / board and the rest of the players in the game. But that doesn't really happen so much in the upper echelon of Magic. They kind of just see that everything that doesn't let your deck do what they want it to do is a threat, and you have to get rid of it ASAP if that means countering it or removing it any way possible. Now, we also have some commanders themselves that also naturally lend themselves to higher levels of play patterns by virtue of being just powerful by default. So you've got any of the 2016 partner commanders, sorry. So like, what is it? Timna, Tana, Thrasios is a huge one.
There's the green-blue one whose name escapes me. Tessa Mana. There's Vial Smasher. Sidar Kondo is probably one of the lesser ones, but like they all have something going on for them, and the fact that you can partner it with another one means that you're getting like, double the fun. That's why partner was always a problematic mechanic for a lot of people.
Yeah, but I love that they brought partner back in Commander Legends, and they made it so it was less strong and more of just a really cool mechanic. I mean, we still have some problem partners that came out of Commander Legends, but not as powerful as Thrasios or Timner, Tana, or any of the other ones we have just mentioned. So moving on from there, we've got like commanders like Tulane, Najeela, two commanders that I play, but only play in an upper, in that higher level of play. Paul put the Maelstrom Wonder on here as well, and basically any commander that lets you draw cards on themselves, or lets you cheat mana resources, which is where the Maelstrom Wonder comes in, because he lets you cascade. Well, he comes out and he has Cascade, and I believe he also gives other creatures haste as well. So anything he cascades into...
Cascade. He uses 3 free spells that has haste and gives all your other creatures haste, and is a 3-turn clock.
You can see why that commander is not a mid-tier commander. 3-turn clocks on the battlefield are they kind of just feel bad, really. Or any commander that really fuels the rest of your deck's strategy. So, in turn, I'm going to say that I really only have one deck that's built around just the strategy itself, and the commander just kind of helps it, and that's Teysa Karlov. You guys know the deck. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but basically that deck can run without casting the commander once. So I don't even need the commander on the field to do what it wants to do, but the commander definitely enhances what I want it to do. I'm not saying that it is a powerful deck. That's kind of what we're talking about, where like the commander fuels the rest of the strategy.
Speaking of mid, we decided that we would take to the community to kind of give their input on the situation, see what like they thought mid was, cards that they like to see, don't like to see, blah, 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 blah. And I think we're just going to lead off with cards that we like to see, mainly because there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack with things that people don't like to see. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, definitely. And this is how we're going to go. This is going to be our usual episode format so a couple weeks out before we record an episode, we're going to put something up on Twitter and just ask you guys questions and polls and everything, just to kind of get a bit of a community feedback here, so it can be featured in an episode. And if you want to be a part of that conversation and discussion, don't forget to go and hit us up on Twitter and follow us at CMDR@arms. So the first one that was said to us on Twitter was Sire of Insanity. He said it was, I can't remember who it said it was, but it definitely was their pet card. And I'm like, Sire of Insanity shouldn't be a pet card, I don't think.
I think it's fine. It's in 2 colors. It's 6 mana. It's a 6/4. And it's symmetrical. So everybody has to pitch their hand at the end of each turn. It's not like the most efficient way to have an effect like that, but I would say that it is definitely I don't know about the term fun, but it is a balanced way of accomplishing this, especially since you do have to be in 2 colors, which, Rakdos decks generally aren't the most powerful, with certain exceptions, and I have to say that because I know somebody's gonna attack me if I don't say that. I know Angie Falconwrath is like a CDH deck. Relax, I'm not that stupid.
Wait, Angie Falconwrath a CDH deck? I thought it was just a mid-little fun janky discard deck.
Anyway,
I am actually going to apologize here real quickly because I confused Sire of Insanity for Master of Cruelties. That was my bad. I was like, Master of Cruelties is not a pet card because it reduces your opponent's life to 1. How is that fun? Realizing that Sire of Insanity just pitches your hand. That's not bad. And like Paul said, it is 6 mana. So
yeah. So this card, I understand why it's a pet card. Not a pet card of mine, but if somebody played this, I wouldn't like it, but I would understand the situation.
Yeah. This next one's kind of niche, really. It's Patron of Nezumi. This one it's a black creature that has rat offering, and you can sacrifice rats.
I think you can sacrifice rats to make rats. Like you make rats equal to that rat's power or something like that. I don't really remember.
It's definitely janky and it's definitely fun. And I did just help a friend put together a rat deck, a Marinar list, and he was gonna play it in there, but we decided to cut it out for something else. Because he wanted it to be at a certain like power level, and to get to that power level, we had to kind of like trim the fat essentially out of the deck and put in more efficient cards, which is why Patron of Nezumi came out. But it is a cool card, man. I like this card. I like that it's kind of got like the Devour mechanic that isn't quite Devour mechanic as well.
Yeah, offering is like it's kind of similar to what would it be similar to? Not really Devour. Emerge from Shadows of Innistrad. It's pretty similar to how that functions. You can sack a creature like of that type, and then you can play it as though it has flash and reduce the cost by that creature's cost. Whatever. It's an old mechanic. You don't really see it pop up too often, so I won't spend too much time on that. But Patron of Nezumi is. I want to say that because Alex has a rats deck. I want to say that Alex also took Patron of Nezumi out of his deck. And yeah, I think the person that mentioned this to us specifically mentioned as a commander Patron of Nezumi, which is pretty interesting. Most people will opt for different things. I think Alex uses like, can't remember, Ayama something of Lochthwain from Eldraine. She like drains people when black creatures die or something like that.
Oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about. She's triple black. When a black creature ETBs, she drains.
Yeah, and you can like sack black creatures to draw cards.
Yeah. That's not a bad one.
Yeah. But Patron of Nezumi, like, that's Rat City.
The art also even looks like a rat too. But the next one we have here is Dictate of Karametra. This is a mana doubler for everyone. Usually see it in more like group hug kind of decks and everything, but still really fun to see it come down. This was someone else's top pick for their like what they wanted to see in mid-level commander, and it kind of just it gives the rest of the players the extra mana to do what they want to do, and it also excels everyone else. So it kind of just puts the game on turbo, where you're able to get through as many spells as possible, play some big old spells faster, kind of accelerating the game a little bit, And sometimes that can be a lot of fun. So we like seeing like certain mana doublers coming out in mid-level Commander.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that pretty much all of the fun dictates are ones that I actually like to see in mid. So like Dictate of Karametra, Dictate of Crufix is a personal favorite of mine. Is that where the fun ones stop? It might be.
I think so, yeah.
I'm trying to remember all of them. There's Dictate of the Twin Gods. That one's like medium. Dictate of Erebos, definitely not fun. What's the fifth one I'm missing? There is a fifth one, right? I got the green one, the blue one. Oh, Dictate of Heliod. That's a really good one. That one's not really fun though. But since I already mentioned it, Dictate of Heliod is an anthem that gives +2/+2. It's not something that you see very often. So if you haven't played with it yet, I'd recommend trying it out. You might like it. But yeah, Dictate of Karametra and Dictate of Crufix, both cards that I really very much love to see. They are symmetrical, but they have flash. All the dictates have flash. So you can kind of get the first benefit off of it by playing it on the end step of the person before you, which is really cool and unique to these cards. Because most symmetrical effects like that, you play them and then the opponent next to you gets to use it first. Not so with this.
Yeah, and the next one is a card that I have just never heard of, and I had to Google it I had to Google it to figure out what it did when they mentioned it to us, and then I had to re-Google it again right now to remember what it did, and that's Tortured Existence. So just quickly, Tortured Existence it's an old card from Stronghold. Basically, it's an enchantment. You can pay a black, choose and discard a creature card, and return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
The only reason I knew what this card was is because I have followed Pauper from time to time, and this is actually a deck in Pauper. It plays like Tortured Existence and Golgari Brownscale, I think. And yeah, it's a really interesting deck. Really interesting card, too, especially for decks that prefer to cast things from the hand, or if you have like a slight Blood Rush theme like I used to do with Marin. It's kind of cool for that. It's cool for like Phage the Untouchable. If you find a way, if you need a way to get Phage out of your graveyard because you can't cast it from your command zone, Tortured Existence is a way to do that. I would consider this like a slight variation on, was it Phyrexian Reclamation? Yeah, that's the one. Phyrexian Reclamation, where you can pay like a black and pay 2 life to bring a creature from your hand to the top of your deck or something. Might be to your hand. Can't remember. But it's a really cool card. Honestly, I have not seen this card a single time. And I think it could exist even at high. It's very efficiently costed. It's a very powerful effect. And you can like discard your dredgers to get non-dredgers from your graveyard. You can use it as a way to ditch commander tax, which is always nice, especially in like Modrotha decks. Pretty cool. Yeah, I guess I really said pretty much everything there is to say about that.
Yeah, and the next one's a card that I see all the time. It is a mid-level finisher in most games that are playing around that level. It's kind of hard to deal with, gives you a lot of value. It's only a 5/5, but costs 7. Can you guess what it is? It's Avenger of Zendikar. So Avenger of Zendikar, when it ETBs, it makes plants, and then has landfall. Whenever a land ETBs, you put a +1/+1 on all plants. This can usually get you upwards of 15, 16 plants when it comes down for only 7 mana. You're usually using this to end games. I like seeing Avenger of Zendikar as a finisher. I used it in a lot of my decks. I think I still have a couple copies hanging around in my studio somewhere. I do like to use it as much as possible when I'm playing mid. It's definitely in my landfall deck, and I believe it's also in my Gearhead deck. Because I mean, I can play that, get some planty boys out there, use them for extra blockers if I need to, or attackers if I can. Avenger Zendikar is just a cool card, man. I really like that one.
Yeah, I like Avenger of Zendikar not only as a finisher, but I also like a nice like tempo Avenger of Zendikar, like a turn 6 or 7 Avenger, just to start snowballing early on.
Yeah, and it really does help you snowball really quickly as well. And it may make you become part of like a threat to people, because you'll have, a 5/5 with trample, I believe. Plus you'll have like maybe, at minimum, if you're playing it on curve, you'll have at minimum 7 plants. And then if you play the land after, you'll have, 7 1/2s and a 5/5 with trample ready to, start smacking face on your next turn. But yeah, a nice little just tempo shift with Avengers Zendikar is really good and still holds up even to this day. Like, I don't think... Yeah, I think it's very much a card people just try to abuse more than they just try to remember that it is a value house, as well as it can be, if you have any token doublers in the deck, then you're going to get 14 at minimum kind of thing. Like, it's just a strong, powerful mid-level card, and it still holds a dear place in my heart.
Yeah, I don't believe it actually has trample. I think it's just a 7 mana 5/5. But
I want to say you're probably correct.
I will say that there are very few cards in Magic that you can say are just like ubiquitously mid. This is, I think, one of the cards that I would say, like, if you're playing mid, you are guaranteed to see Avengers Zendikar at one point or another. And you really don't see it anywhere else because it has a home there. Like, it is the mid card.
Yeah, and we're going to get off the landfall theme here and talk about 4 or maybe 3 landfall commanders really quickly, and that's all the Omnaths. So you've got Omnath's Locust of...
There's Locust of Mana, Locust of Rage, Locust of the Royal, and then Locust of... I don't know what the 4-color one is. Ironically enough.
It's the one that just came out too.
The 4-color one. Locust of the...
Creation.
There you go. Locust of Creation.
Because they had to add white into it and give it a really cool white kind of name, which is Locust of Creation.
Pretty much every Omnath still sees play to this day. I would say the least popular one, maybe Locust of the Royal, the 3-color one. I'm not entirely sure, though. That might not be true. But landfall decks everywhere play Locust of Rage, makes 5/5s just for playing lands. Locust of Creation is like a really popular commander still, as well as just a regular card. I would say that card is not mid, personally speaking, at least in the as the commander, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I've only ever seen it used for very bad things though. But if the community says that it's, they've seen it mid, then I'm going to take their word for it.
Yeah, I mean, none of these cards are the cards that we want to see in mid. These are cards that the community loves seeing in mid. And I mean, why not just play all the Omnaths in your Omnath Locust of Creation deck?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, and you probably would, realistically speaking.
Yeah, I mean, just play Omnath Tribal, wait for the 5-armed Omnath to come out, or wherever they're going to give the 5th color to, and kind of just go from there and play just all Omnaths all the time. And then the last thing that was said, I think this was by Crow from Child of Alara, or Children of Alara, sorry, and that is any 8-card combo. So anything that takes 8 cards to achieve what you wanted to achieve is kind of like watching a Turing machine, going off and then just rolling through and winning the game.
Yeah, I don't have an example, and I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to use the brain power to conjure up an example for that, but it is definitely when somebody puts together a 6, 7, 8 card combo. First of all, you can't get upset because you did that. It takes so many cards that just stayed on the field for the longest time that how can you blame anybody but yourself? But also, that player, generally speaking, has to work pretty hard for that 6 to 8 card combo. And sometimes it happens completely by accident. I know that I've seen people whoops into their fair share of combos.
I've done it personally. I have a 4-card combo in Taser, and I have all the times that I have played her, which is about just before we started this podcast, so that I can tell you how long I've had that deck for. I have achieved her infinite combo once without tutors. And only once. And I wanted to add that preface of I didn't tutor for anything. I don't play tutors in Taser. I think I play 1 now, so I lied. I play 1. But at the time, I had no tutors and I achieved my infinite combo once. And I felt like a god. And the rest of the table was can't even be mad because we left, such and such on the field for so long. And I went, yep. And I found a way to abuse it. And I got all the cards and just all the stars aligned and I was able to get it out. And I was very happy. And they were like, shuffle up and play again. I went, hell yeah, I'm going to play again, but I'm going to switch decks because Taser's done what I want Taser to do. All right. So that's our first half of discussion of what is mid and some stuff we want to see in mid. We're going to pass through now to our combat phase, and this is where we're going to go hear a message from our sponsors right now. Welcome back from that ad break. We're going to get straight back into this episode, and we were talking about mid-tier level cards and kind of like a philosophy of what mid-level is. So let's pass through to our main phase 2 now and start playing more cards. But these are the cards that we don't want to see in mid-tier level Commander. So we're going to start off with probably the most famous thing that people like to do in higher play tier, or kind of just slow your opponents down. You can kind of, I guess where I'm going with this, and that's stacks pieces. People hate seeing stacks pieces. We have a couple of examples. And when I say a couple, we have a decent handful of examples of what stack pieces we don't like seeing in Commander, especially that mid tier, and that's like Winter Orb effects, so anything that kind of stops you from playing lands or tapping lands or anything like that. Smokestack, Cursed Totem, Torpor Orb stops ETBs, Collector Oof stops activated abilities of artifacts, Archon of Emeria just shuts off, I believe it's activated abilities of creatures, that one, and things come in tapped as well. Aven Mind Sensor, you can only look at the top 4 cards of your library when you're searching your library. Hushbringer stops death effects and ETBs, I believe. Linvala, Keeper of Silence, activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. Drannith Magistrate, as Paul said in his play of the week. Drannith Magistrate says you can only play cards from your hand, which means you can't play your commander. Hokori Dust Drinker. I'm not sure what this one does, Paul, but you put this on the list.
It's Winter Orb on a creature.
There you go. Back to basics and rule of law like effects. So these are stuff that we don't want to see resolving on the table. This is going to get you groaned at when you go to play one of these, especially if you're playing in mid. If you go to resolve one of these and you don't get a groan, then you're probably playing in the right place for these cards to be played.
The rule of law was actually one that was brought up to us by the community, and I forgot that effects like this exist only because I don't really see them played that often. But if somebody's mentioning it, I'm assuming it's a big deal out there somewhere, and I definitely agree. Rule of Law, not a very fun card. And for those of you who don't know what Rule of Law does, each player can only cast 1 spell per turn. No more than that. Kind of awkward for a lot of decks, especially ones that depend on playing like a lot of cheap creatures. Like Elish Norn does. If I'm only playing a single white 3-drop a turn, then I may as well just I may as well concede the game, because I'm not going to be playing 3 mana, 3 3s, and 2 2s for the rest of the game, once per turn. Yeah, pretty much every card we just mentioned. I think Smokestack is actually the reason why these are all called stacks pieces. I think that was the original one. And they're just... I would say that they are okay individually, but generally speaking, if somebody's playing one of these, they are playing a significant number of other effects like this. And when they're all being played at the same time, like, Winter Orb and Static Orb at the same time, or, if somebody's got like Linvala and Collector Oof out, and the only you can't activate anything except enchantments or lands, then it's kind of a problem. When somebody plays Linvala and plays like, I don't know, there's like an enchantment that makes all lands into 1/1 creatures or something. That's a big problem. There's the new Karn with like Mycosynth Lattice. That's like a stacks thing. Which actually Karn itself, I guess, is a stacks piece because it's the same thing as Collector Roof. That can be a problem.
And it's colorless, and it's only 2 extra mana, and it's a Planeswalker. Kind of hard. It's a little bit harder to deal with than a creature.
Yeah, I mean, stacks pieces, like, they stop people from playing the game. And when you're in mid, it's kind of like uncool. Because the whole reason you're there is to keep it casual. Everybody gets to do their thing, play the game. And if you show up to a mid game and you're like turn 1 Mana Dork into turn 2 like Collector Roof, or turn 2 Drannith Magistrate, which is, I just mentioned at the beginning, that's what happened, right? It could be a little bit of a feels bad, especially if the person that you're stopping from casting their commander was going to do it like the very next turn. I think it's a bigger deal when you're playing with random people. I don't think it's as big a deal when you're playing with friends. But if you show up to a random pod, you don't know anybody there, and you do that, you're probably not going to be invited back to that pod.
I can almost 100% agree with you there. I think if I was to show up with any deck that had these effects in it, and I just went, yeah, it's a mid deck, that's fine, and there was no rule zero discussions or any intention discussions about what your deck does or what you wanted to do or what you even want to get out of the game. And I just started throwing down Hushbringers against Taces or Aven Mind Sensors against high tutoring decks. It's just, or like Archon of Emeria, or even like any of the Thalias or anything, like anything that makes anything come in tapped. I didn't quite exactly put like, what is it, Blind Obedience in here either, but that could also be counted as a stack space if you want to look at it that way. There's Authority of the Consoles that makes creatures come in tapped and you gain life off that one. That can be quite oppressive as well, especially if you're playing against like a lot of token decks. So I mean, yeah, there are just a lot of cards that people don't want to see in mid, and these are, like I said, these are just a decent handful of them. Anything that kind of, you know, like we said, stops your opponents from playing the game. Because we're all there to have fun. We're all there to sling big spells and crash into each other and, you know, just turn cards sideways and hit each other for commander damage. Or even just regular damage. But these next set of cards that we don't like seeing in mid is kind of awkward for Paul because it's the Praetors. So it's Vorinclex, Elish Norn, Sheoldred, Urabrask, and Jin-Gitaxias.
How is that awkward for me?
Because you play Elish Norn.
I have said on more than one occasion that I think Elish Norn should be banned.
I agree with you. I think as a commander, Elish Norn's not so bad because it's a 7 mana. It's 7 mana to get out in mono white. I think that's okay, right? It's kind of like people can see it on the board, they can see it happening. Kind of like using that game with you and Alex as an example here. Like, he saw it on the field, so you were playing that. He knew his deck and what he wanted to be doing, and the only way to really stop you from doing that, it was to Draneth. But that, again, was... The difference is that was with friends, and you guys knew that you could just laugh it off at the end. But if it was a random pod, it would have been a little bit of a different situation. I don't mind seeing some of these Praetors come down in a game of mid. I don't like seeing Vorinclex come down. I quite, like, I get not visually upset or salty, but it's just like, oh, really? Like, you're going to get double mana and I'm going to have my lands tapped, and once I use them, they don't untap, so I have to like kind of think of how I'm going to make this work. And we are only talking about old Vorinclex, like not new Klex. Elish Norn, I think, is also, like I said, a little bit annoying when I see it resolve, especially when I'm playing a certain deck. Or a lot of my decks require me to have 1/1s on the field, so I can kind of see why that'd be annoying. And I've experienced it firsthand, not from Paul, from other people online in our online community, and not just our online community, but all the other online communities out there. Which is where actually this episode came from. I was hit up by one of my friends from another server, and they said, hey, we should talk about like what is mid, because they're having a lot of issues about trying to convey what is mid to on their server. Sheoldred in a reanimated deck or in just any black deck is just also really good. Urabrask, I haven't seen resolve in a game yet, or I couldn't even remember what it even does off the top of my head. I know it's the red Praetor.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give my opinion real quick. I think Vorinclex and Elish Norn are perhaps the biggest offenders of the mid rule, which means that everybody gets to do their thing and have fun. Sheoldred and Jin-Gitaxias, I would say, are like actually okay. I think they're good for sure, but as far as them being like broken, I wouldn't be offended to see them in mid, is what I'm saying. Urabrask, because James mentioned he doesn't know what it does. Pretty much nobody does. The red Praetor, it's a 5 mana 4/4. Your creatures have haste, and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Weird effect on a red creature, I know. Well, the haste
that
part
is a weird effect on a red creature.
The come into play tapped is weird.
That is really weird. And then Jin-Gitaxias is the blue one, and it's like you draw cards and you no longer have a max hand size or something.
At the end of your turn, it's a 10 mana? Might be 10 mana flash, 5/4. At the end of your turn, you draw 7 cards, and your opponent's max hand sizes are reduced by 7.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It says you can play Magic and your opponents have to top deck, and then if they don't play that spell, they have to discard it. That's super fun. Super fun. We do mention the Praetors.
Mana.
What was that?
It's 10 mana.
Yeah,
10.
I know that, but I mean, there's easy ways to cheat it out, my dude. Like,
It's still 10 mana.
Even
10.
in like mono blue, you've got braids. It's 10 mana, yes, but you can easily cheat that out. You got braids, you got show and tell effects. I mean, there's ways to do it.
10 mana. 10.
No, we're supposed to tell Paul. We're supposed to be telling people we don't want to see these cards played. Not justification of why they can play it in mid because it's 10 mana.
All right, look, like I said, it's just my opinion. Jin-Gitaxias, all right, maybe that one's a little more feels bad, but I think Sheoldred is fine. Vorinclex and Elesh Norn can definitely go. I don't think those have a place in mid.
Yeah,
but
so
the rest of them I think are okay. Jin-Gitaxias may be a little on the edge.
Yeah, like I was saying, the Praetors weren't our idea. Like, we didn't put them on the list. It was given to us by the community via Twitter. The Praetors, I think that tweet was written in all caps with like eyeballs next to it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I hear you. You guys don't like Praetors. We understand that. But everything else, we put our own bit of a spin on here. A lot of the other ones that came through were actually, they're still on the list. We haven't got to those ones yet. But the next one here, we're going to move on past Praetors, is Efficient Resource Disruption. And this is cards like Mind Slicer, Liliana's Spectre / Agent of Treachery effects with Blinking, which is stealing effects and everything, and Necrogen Mists.
Yeah, Necrogen Mist. That's an old enchantment. At the beginning of each player's turn or upkeep, they discard a card for 3 mana. It just sits there and accrues value over time for like very little cost, and the deck that's playing it often doesn't care about discarding cards. Like Turgid, for example, would play.
I had this in my Turgid list.
Yeah.
Just for that exact fact. I didn't care that I was discarding cards. I could easily just get them back, or I would just, go through my deck till I found those cards that I needed to use other people's cards, and then whatever they were discarding, I was getting. So
Liliana's Spectre effects, those aren't ones that you generally see too often, but I mean, I've run into a couple of strategies like that. Mind Slicer is one that you see every now and then. I play it in my Muldrotha deck. Everybody just pitches their hand. It's 4 mana. All it has to do is die, which generally you have a way of making that happen anyway. But even if you don't, it just sits there as a looming threat for anybody that dares trifle with you, Agent of Treachery, big ol' feels bad. Blatant Thievery was a card that I used to think was so overpowered. It's 7 mana, so the same cost as Agent of Treachery. And it is the same effect. You steal a permanent from each player, from each opponent. But Agent of Treachery is a creature, so you get to blink it and do it over and over and over and over and over. And the fact that I used to think that Blatant Thievery was like overpowered or big feels bad, well, you can imagine how I feel about Agent of Treachery being repeated over and over again. Like, oh yeah, I'll take your Banner Rocks, I'll take your Commander, I'll take blah, 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 blah. Goes on from there. Yeah. And then nobody just likes discarding cards in their hand.
I mean, that's totally fair. I mean, Agent of Treachery was mentioned to us on Twitter, and it was being compared to as bad as Primetime. And we all know how bad Primetime could be. So if we don't want to see efficient resource disruption in our mid-level games, Paul, how do we feel about mana disruption? And that's in the ways of like Mana Barb, Storm Cauldron, Mana Breach, Hokori Dustdrinker is here as well. Winter Orb again, Hall of Gemstones, which we have a story about Hall of Gemstones and Paul. Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, and Back to Basics like effects.
So first of all, this is in a different category than the resource disruption because there's just a lot to talk about. There's a lot of mana disruption effects out there, so it felt like it deserved its own spot. Second of all, it's like, would you rather have what's a good way to explain this? Would you rather have would you rather eat garbage or garbage that smells good? Right? So like with with the resource disruption, like, would you rather not have the card to cast? Or with mana disruption, would you rather see what you can cast and not be able to cast it? It's like pick your poison, Pretty much all of the cards that we mentioned here are ones that either force your lands to not tap for the color of mana that you want. That's like Hall of Gemstone, Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon. or just straight up punish you for wanting to play more than a couple colors. Like Back to Basics, Blood Moon, same thing. Hall of Gemstone, same thing. Winter Urban Hokori Deathstrinker just slow you down. Mana Barbs, I think it like deals a damage to you, but it makes things tap for double, something like that. Not really mana disruption.
I believe it just deals damage to you when you tap lands.
Oh, you might be right, actually. Yeah. I might be thinking of a different card. Storm Cauldron, that's a big one. Whenever you tap a land, bounce it back to your hand. I personally hate mana disruption effects. I hate them. I don't like to see them, like, ever. Even at, like, the CDH/high level, I hate it. It just feels bad. I don't like my lands being, I don't like knowing what I could do and not being able to do it. I'm pretty much just sitting there hoping that I draw something to deal with it. Whereas if I don't even have the cards in my hand, then I can't cast them anyway, so it doesn't matter what my lands do. But if I have the cards in my hand, I know what I want to do, and I just can't do it.
Kind of like that game that we played with Corey from the Commander crew, where you played Hall of Gemstones.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I didn't expect it to stick around that long.
Yeah, and he was playing a 4-color deck who was already land screwed, and you screwed him even further. But alas, I would say that was even with friends, but that was very early on in our friendship and collab between us and the Commander crew. So, I don't really play any of these cards in my decks. I don't like to see them when they come down in mid games. I do play Mana Breach in True Lane, but that's because True Lane's up there, and that's where he is like to be played. I've had Storm Cauldron played against me in a group hug deck. It was quote-unquote group hug. Also, I am just going to take this time now to say, if your deck isn't a group hug deck, don't tell people it's a group hug deck. I'm looking at you, Xyrus, Snakes players. I've had it happen. Don't do it. It's bad. Just please don't. Don't tell me that you're playing a group hug deck and then kill me with Warnstorm Surge or Impact Tremors, making me draw 1 billion cards. Yeah, you're making me draw cards, but I'm going to die because you've just killed me with all the snakes that you've just made. Not a group hug deck. Please don't tell people it's group hug. Unless it actually is group hug, then it's okay. Take the Warmstorm Surge out. Take out the other one that I said, the Impact Tremors. Take that out as well. Don't need it. Who needs it? Just hit me with snakes. I would rather die to snakes than die to ETB damage. Anyway. I've had Storm Cauldron played on me before. It wasn't too bad. It kind of kept me plateauing where I was. I was picking up the same land and playing it down every time I was playing a spell. So it wasn't as bad as what it definitely could be. And I mean, we've all been Blood Mooned. I've been Blood Mooned, but it wasn't until I started playing in the higher echelon of Magic that I started getting Blood Mooned. And that's about really it. That's all I have. Besides maybe like Winter Orb, I did play against my friend's Urza deck, and he played Winter Orb in there because he was like, ha ha ha, this is funny. I was like, ha ha ha, it's not funny. It's only fun for you, and I hate this. And I think that was like the first time I ever wanted to actually scoop to a game of Magic that was with friends, because I was just that, like, I wasn't upset. It was just, I was frustrated that I drove 6 hours to play Magic with this guy and the rest of my other friends, and he said I couldn't play Magic.
Yeah, that's yeah. There's no words that I can use to describe that.
That's all right. But you know what's worse than Mana Disruption, Paul?
Something that I don't actually think is worse than Mana Disruption.
Really? I think it is.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like it either way, but I just don't think it's as bad.
This is our last little set of cards here that we don't like seeing. I don't like seeing this in any form of Magic, and that's mass land destruction, or even just like, no, I'll keep it with mass land destruction. I think single target land destruction is totally fine. In certain contexts. Don't take that out of context. So mass land destruction, you've got Armageddon / Ravages of War, Obliterate, Strip Mine / Wasteland, in tandem with either Crucible of Worlds or anything that's going to give you extra lands every turn, like Roundup Excavator is a good one. Mina and Den is another good one as well. Ruination, Sunder, and Cataclysm.
Yeah, the last two I slapped on there towards the end because they're not ones that you see often, but they still count. Sunder like bounces all the lands to their owner's hand, and Cataclysm makes you sack down to 1 land. So not pleasant. Yeah, I honestly like mass land destruction. A lot of people see it as like, oh, like you can't win, so you're just gonna destroy everybody's land so that nobody else can do anything either. And like, if you're playing mass land destruction that way, I 100% agree. Don't do that. And I almost just used a bad word there, but like, if you are using mass land destruction specifically just to stop everybody else from playing because you're having a bad time, that is not okay. Don't do that. It's not cool.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you rather just scoop it up, reshuffle, and play another game instead of playing the same drawn-out game that you've just set everybody back from again?
Yeah. I would say that mass land destruction is okay in the following context. 1, you have a way to make sure that you keep your lands, because that's pretty much a win in my book. Or 2, you are so far ahead on board that you can guarantee a win if nobody else can do anything, i.e. by blowing up their lands. And I have done this in Elvish Norn before, where I have Armageddon because I had like 6 or 7 creatures out, including Elvish Norn. Everybody else had like a creature or 2. And I Armageddoned because I knew I could win from that point. Under those pretenses, I think mass land destruction is okay. Is it a mid thing to do? I think that, again, also depends on the card that you're using as well as the context. I would say that Obliterate is not a mid card. Because you can't be countered, can't really interact with it, just blows everything up. Nothing you can do about it. Unless you have like Teferi's Protection or whatever. But Teferi's Protection in and of itself, I would say, is also not mid. But whatever. Yeah. But like Ruination, that one only gets non-basics. Sunder, a little more of a feels bad. I would say that's actually worse than blowing them up, because then you just have to pitch them. Like, now you also are over max hand size, so you have to pitch a bunch of stuff. Yeah, but like Armageddon and the like, I would say that as long as you're not playing them like an absolute bully, I almost use another bad word there again. I would say that these are actually, for the most part, okay. Again, with the exception that I mentioned before with like Obliterate. But that's just my opinion.
So, my opinion's very similar. I have been mass land destructed when I had barely any lands on the field, and I wasn't doing anything anyway, but there was one player who was getting way far ahead, and he was winning the game, and we all got all of our, I believe it was Ruination hits, just basic lands, right? Or it's not non-basic
Ruination
lands.
hits non-basic lands.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but we got mass land destructed, and I was like, I have no way of coming back from this game ever. We all got kind of a little bit salty at the player who played it, and was just like, she's like, oh, well, it was in the list, and I'm like, that's cool and all, like don't get me wrong, that's fine. I just think it was probably just a bad time to play it because she didn't have anything on board either to win with, and that's kind of like the biggest thing with mass land destruction. Now, I did, when I first heard that Armageddon was a thing in Commander, or even just in Magic in general, I very much put together a Gave list, or Gave list, the Guru of Spores, where it kind of revolved around me making infinite mana, or just like heaps of mana with Ashnod's Altar or Phyrexian Altar, or any way of making like mana that wasn't through lands. Kind of just, making a lot of Saprolings as well, and then destroying all my opponent's lands. And now I'd be able to keep mine with, it's the 2 mana Heroic Intervention. I'd be able to keep all my lands with that as well. But at the time, it was just like, I'll just make Saprolings and have things that when they die, they come back. And it was very aristocratic. And it was like, yeah, let's just throw some land destruction in there, because why not? And it was like that, why not? Because I didn't realize how bad it was going to be for the other players at the table than just a, haha, that's funny, we have no lands kind of aspect, which is where I kind of think people are kind of playing that in mid. If they are playing land destruction effects, they're just like, oh well, if I play this, then no one has access to any lands, and we'll just drag this game out for a lot longer than usual. And mid-tier level games kind of go longer just by themselves because you are ramping up to the point where you're playing those 7, 8, 9, 10 costed spells. And if you don't have that mana to play it, you could be 3-4 hours deep and have 5 lands because someone's destroyed them, and then you got to draw cards to get more lands, and you've already used all your ramp spells. You no longer have Fast Seek, Cultivate, Nature's Law, Rampant Growth. I think I already said that one. Kadama's Reach. I think I already said that one as well. But you've used all your ramp spells to go and get your lands out of your library, and then someone blows them all up. That doesn't feel good. That feels like the ultimate bad. So that's why people don't like seeing mass land destruction in mid-level tier commander.
There's actually a good opportunity to offer my concluding statement for all this, because you said that they were like, oh, well, it's in the list. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, you are the player. And honestly, I am a firm believer in the fact that you can make anything mid if you choose to play it mid. Like, I play Winter Orb in my Brago deck. I think I have cast that thing a total of twice. And I've had that Brago deck for like 6, almost 7 years now. Or whenever Conspiracy came out, it was basically when I put that deck together. So I've had that deck for a while. And I almost never cast Winter Orb because I know nobody likes it. To the point where like I should probably just take it out of the deck. But you are the player. If you want to play it mid, you can literally choose to do that. You don't have to play that Agent of Treachery in your hand. You don't have to use it to steal their commander if you do play it. You can take, like a mana rock or something. Is it gonna feel bad still? Maybe a little bit, but at least they still have their commander. Like the decisions you make can be mid even if your deck is high. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Yeah,
I would also, in the same vein, say that mid's very much a mindset. If you go into a game, even with a high deck, and you like, if all your friends only have mid-level decks and you have a high-level deck, you have the choice and the decisions to play it at 75 to 50% efficiency, no matter what you get in your hand. And I've done it before. I have personally done this with my Tulane deck. I want to play Tulane because I love playing that deck. Am I going to play it to its most efficient all the time? No. And that's because I gauge it by the rest of my table. They're like, well, we're having a mid-level game. All right, cool. I'm just going to use this just to draw a butt ton of cards and then not do anything. And I've shown games where I have lost a game and I had an infinite combo in my hand and I chose not to play it because I was more worried about having fun with my friends than winning the game and having them be, a little bit upset or anything, or walking away not having a good old laugh. So as much as I say that, like, I do play like the higher tier of Magic, I will also play a 10 deck at 50% to 75% efficiency as well. And I think with that, we're gonna pass around an end step here, Paul. Did you have anything else you wanted to, any more final thoughts you wanted to say?
Nope.
That
was just my nice succinct concluding statement right there.
Cool. So let's move on to let's go to our end step / cleanup phase here. And if you want to get a part of these discussions that we have on Twitter and be a part of any of the upcoming episodes that we have, or anything that you want to talk to us about it, do it on Twitter and Instagram at CMDR@arms. Also, go check out the YouTube. Please subscribe, like our videos, comment on them. You can find it at YouTube/commanderatarms. We have our TCG affiliate link. If you want to buy cards online, support your local game store, and get the cards shipped directly to your door, you can do that through tcgplayer.com/commanderatarms. We get a little bit of a kickback on that one as well. We have our merch shirt. This is on a Bella canvas shirt. I love it so much. I wear mine every time I record a new deck tech for the YouTube channel. I almost said for the podcast, but I'm not wearing it right now because no one's going to see me. But I wear it every time I go to a game store, and so does Paul. We like to rep our Commander at Arms shirts, and if you want to get one, you can do it at the Etsy link below on Bad Fred Designs. Go check them out as well for all of their other nerdy, cool stuff they do. They do deck boxes and other kind of boxes as well. Awesome products. Go check them out. Go check out the shirt and pick one up if you want it. We also have our Patreon where you can direct the show. You can support the show directly through Patreon at patreon.com/commanderatarms. All of our patrons get a shout out. And we do that whenever they become a first patron, and we love all of our patrons. You guys, again, help us keep the lights on here in the studio, help us to create more content for your eyes and your ears as well. And after that, Paul, do you have anything you want to say to our viewers/listeners?
I know it's been a while, everybody, but I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. Even if this is the first and last episode you ever have or ever will listen to, I want to thank you for taking the time to do so. It means a lot to me and James because, time is fleeting. So the fact that you spent even just a little bit listening to us is something that we appreciate very much. If you enjoyed what you heard, please feel free to share our name around, maybe with your playgroup, maybe with, if you have any friends that play Magic, say, hey, I was listening to these couple of cool guys, James and Paul, on the Commander at Arms podcast. They mentioned a couple of cool things that I think you should check out. Just get our name out there. The more people we get to interact with, the better, because kind of the part of the whole podcast is to, be part of the community and talk about the things that the community wants to talk about, within reason, I should say. But at any rate, if you're on YouTube, also don't forget to subscribe, like the video, comment, ring the bell. I think those are all 4 steps. Just do all that stuff. We really want to grow on YouTube as well as Twitter, or whatever community there is. So if you could do that, it would mean a lot to us.
And with that, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you've been listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast. Peace.
See ya.